Hello and welcome to this edition of InnerView. I'm Josh Sidorowitz. Today it is a $195 million project planned to bring a high-speed bus line all the way from downtown Lansing to the Meridian Mall here in Okemos. Of course, we're talking the CATA BRT, but what exactly is a BRT? Where will it go? Who's going to pay for this? We've got a lot of questions. We'll hope to get that all answered. We've got a panel here that'll answer those questions, shed some light on a whole lot more. But before we do that, let's take a little preview of what we can expect here. We've got a little piece on this topic. Take a look.
CATA has started an open dialogue with the public about bus rapid transit, or BRT. BRT is a new bus system that would run on its own dedicated lane and operate on Michigan Avenue and Grand River Avenue, stretching from downtown Lansing to the Meridian Mall. CATA's CEO, Sandy Draggoo, told us about the design.
They will have doors on both sides. They will pull up to a station, and the station will be even to the doors of the buses.
The new CATA buses will be larger than the older ones, featuring more standing room and room for bikes inside the bus. BRT can potentially have a large economic impact on the area.
People businesses, contractors, people who own apartment places can buy a station, can name a station, can make the station their own. And they then have this station, and then you build around this station. And so then this makes economic development be bigger around that station. And around the station has economic development builds of its own.
CATA has been holding open meetings to get feedback on this project.
We are saying to the people, come, give us your ideas, tell us what you like, tell us how you'd like to envision this, or tell us if you don't like it. Tell us if you think this is absolutely not anything that you want.
CATA is hoping to begin building by 2017. From Meridian Township, Connor Hansen, Home TV.
All right, just the tip of the iceberg there, Connor. Thank you so much. And as we mentioned, we have a panel here ready to discuss this. We'll introduce you to them right now. And you saw her in the piece, Miss Sandy Draggoo, the Executive Director and CEO of CATA, Julie Brixie, who we're all familiar with here, the Treasurer of Meridian Township, and then, of course, Mr. Nathan Triplett, the Mayor of East Lansing. We thank you all for coming in today. So Sandy, I'll start with you, and we touched a little on it in the piece there, but looking at this high-speed bus line, I guess my first question is, how is this different from the Route 1, which we already have running from Meridian Mall to downtown Lansing? What is the big difference between that?
I think one of the big things that's different is that it's going to be separated from the rest of traffic. And, you know, when I listen to that, you kind of think, oh, I wish I could do that one over again. So then maybe I can do that one over again and hopefully make it clear. But think about it as being pulled out of traffic so that it will be in its own dedicated lane. So think of that one as being different. Then think of it as having doors on both sides and having stations of its own where our customers will have prepaid their fare before they get on it. So you don't have to think about standing in line to stand behind that fella in front of you that's taking too long to pay his fare that's going to hold you up.
Yes.
So those are some of the big differences.
Okay, and we're talking center running stations going down the middle.
Maybe center running,
okay,
but what we came up with in East Lansing may be different than that.
Okay, and talking about maybe, because there are a lot of variables, a lot of things still to be worked out, and that is where these charrettes come in, which we've heard so much about here lately, different planning things, and that's where I'll go to Nathan first here. Now, we had the first of the charrettes. There was a whole week dedicated to East Lansing and working out the different design elements, logistical concerns with this project, and you were at quite a few of these, as I understand. One of the things that strikes me that would be the biggest hurdle, at least through East Lansing as opposed to some of these other lines, Nathan, is how tightly compact when you get to downtown it is. There's not a lot of wiggle room there. Is that one of the things I assume you heard at these charrettes?
That's definitely part of the issue when you talk about the limited right-of-way that's available in which to do all the things that we have to do. Bus rapid transit, vehicular traffic, pedestrians, bicycles. It's a lot to fit into a very small space. I think what we saw as a result of the charrette process is that there are design solutions that will allow you to accommodate all of those different modes of transportation while preserving pedestrian safety and really the character of our downtown. For a very long time since this project started to be discussed, one of the concerns in East Lansing was the preservation of the median that runs through downtown. It's really part of the character of that Grand River Avenue piece of our community. And the solution that was arrived at as a result of the charrette preserves 90% of that median while also taking into account the need to accommodate all these different modes. So I think what's important for folks to remember is that this project is still at a very conceptual stage. In East Lansing now, as a result of the charrette, we've gotten it down to a level of some greater specificity, but there are still questions that need to be answered. And I'm sure Sandy's going to talk about the stakeholder meetings that will happen along the rest of the corridor to do that whole process. So when folks say they have an opinion about the plan, there isn't really a plan at that level of detail yet where people can answer a lot of those questions. That's the process we're working through now. In East Lansing, we've answered many of those questions, and here in April during these stakeholder meetings, hopefully the folks in Meridian Township and Lansing Township and the city of Lansing will be able to answer their questions as well.
Yes, which segues nicely into Julie and Meridian Township coming into this conversation. In Meridian Township, obviously one of the major parts of this whole route, we're going to have the hub at Meridian Mall, sort of an ending point or a starting point for the station. In sort of your early talks, obviously we haven't had charrettes yet, but talking to people in the township around the area, Julie, are people enthusiastic about this? How are people kind of feeling about this project?
Josh, there's a lot of excitement about the economic development opportunities that are going to result from the bus rapid transit project. And it might not end at Meridian Mall, it might end at Meyer. So the end-to-end points have not been determined yet, and that's going to happen as we go through these stakeholder meetings. And that's an important thing for everybody to know. As Nathan said, we're really still in the preliminary phases of it, and what we're doing at this point in time is selecting where the stations will be, and then there will be additional design work, lots of additional design work after we've selected the station locations. But there's a ton of interest because unlike East Lansing, which has a median and has this really well developed and really nice streetscape, the bus rapid transit is going to provide a unique opportunity for Meridian Township to put in a streetscape to improve the streetscape of the Grand River Corridor. Right now it's 5 lanes, 6 lanes in some places. It's not easy to navigate as a pedestrian or a cyclist, and we've heard that over and over and over again from our residents. I think that one of the aspects of the bus rapid transit project is that we have the opportunity to put unified lighting and trees between the street and the sidewalk to make it more walkable and more pedestrian friendly. The concepts that have been talked about in East Lansing might be something that translate all the way through Meridian Township. It's really exciting.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that. Meridian Township is sort of a blank slate. There's so many different options and so many different routes you can take. And as you mentioned too, whether it ends at Meridian Mall or Meyer, these are all discussions that I assume bringing in businesses
Correct.
And different people to kind of hammer down a final version of what they'd want to see.
Right.
And Sandy, I'll go to you. These charrettes then for Lansing and Meridian Township, these are starting in the next few weeks here in April over a few days, correct?
Yes. One of the things probably that your camera people are already doing is making this point that April 14 to 17 are when those stakeholder meetings are going to be. And they will be all the way from the Capitol all the way here to Marsh Road. And those times are all now set so that people can come and again make their wishes heard. And one of the things that I had said at the beginning welcome in East Lansing was that this really is a process. And as Nathan had said earlier, it's not that anything is set in stone at all. It
Right.
is a process. And so as it goes along, it may get a little more solidified, but it is a process. And so we want people's ideas. And so whether you're wanting to have your emphasis be walking or biking or busing or cars or whatever. It's a process that we want to hear from.
It's almost unprecedented, I feel like, this process. If anyone comes out in the end and goes, you know, I feel like they just weren't listening, yes. You obviously weren't paying attention because
yes.
there's going to be so much input by the time
yes.
this is done. And if we can throw up, too, while we're talking about this, we have a map sort of just to show how long this route is and where it'll go to. I think we have a graphic of that. And going back to what Julie had mentioned and the stations and where to place the stations and the economic catalysts
yes.
that these stations can
yes.
provide. Can you describe a little bit what you mean by that?
Well, it is planned, again, in the process that there would be about 25 of those stations along the whole route, the whole 7-8 mile route. And in there, and what other places that have BRTs, one of the overwhelming things that a BRT can bring is economic development. And so as I was stumbling with in that Sunday morning one where I was trying to do that on that Sunday morning out on that porch, was to say that there are so many things that can happen around a station. Different people, different businesses can adopt a station, can buy a station, can build around a station. It can have its own flavor. It gets its own neighborhood. It can build apartments around it. It can build stores. It can build flavors. There are just so many things that economic development can build around certain stations. And so then as that happens, that is the economic development. That is what builds the dollars around that. And then as it builds the core, then it gets bigger and bigger around that. And then as the people come to that, it then gets that growth and that economic development.
Could, say, a station is near Sparrow or
yes.
near the Lugnut Stadium, could those be sponsored? Could those be maintained by those
yes.
properties?
That is what
okay.
that is what is hoped for. That
okay.
that is what happens around these BRT stations. And so let's take Sparrow. You know, the health line, the health station, whatever that comes up with then as the Sparrow stop, the you know, that whole thing that is around Sparrow and what Sparrow has done already there. And so then think about having that happen right there at Sparrow. And then what happens as it balloons around there, and have people be able to be dropped off right there at Sparrow. And what could happen there. And then the development around the area of Frandor or the area around MSU and downtown East Lansing, and each of those spots that could make that economic development.
And we have some slides that we can put up too of kind of what these stations might look like, as well as the buses. We can throw those up. And Mayor Triplett, I saw you shaking your head down there when we were talking about the economic benefits of these stations. As a city leader, what does that kind of mean for you? What are you kind of looking at or envisioning that this could mean for East Lansing? Yeah,
the economic development component is certainly one of the things that we're thinking about, and ours is hardly the first region to embark on a transportation project like this. You've got examples in Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Eugene, Oregon, which in many ways is actually probably the best analogy to the Lansing region. And so we've had some anecdotal experience with what happens. You see this phenomenon of transit-oriented development occurring, and it makes a lot of intuitive sense. It makes it easier for people to live along the route, to move along the route, and to be able to enjoy all the amenities that develop around this station, because there's a convenient means that they trust and they know is reliable to be able to get from A to B along the corridor, and that can have huge economic development implications. I think already our region has recognized through LEAP and through our various jurisdictions that this Michigan Avenue Grand River corridor is really an economic backbone for the region. But even with Route 1 there today, there's not really a convenient way to get people back and forth because you're dealing with conflicting traffic patterns, you're dealing with capacity issues. If the bus rapid transit system were in place there, you have all the benefit of this already vibrant and growing corridor, and overlaid on top of it, you have this convenient transportation mechanism which connects all of those things together. So, you know, it's hard to say exactly what it would look like in the end in terms of what would develop, but what we know is you create a foundation upon which all of these different things could develop in the future, and really focus that development on the corridor, not spread out across the region in a way that really doesn't make sense, but focused it on this economic backbone from Lansing all the way through East Lansing and into Meridian Township.
And as you mentioned, we've got some good examples to go off, and I assume you guys have been looking at those places as well.
Yes. Yes.
I want to go, we've talked about some of the concerns that possibly in East Lansing of implementing a line like this, and I hate to put you on the spot, Julie, but if you've thought of, or if you've been talking to people, some of the concerns maybe that could arise with having this in Meridian Township, you know, as you mentioned, that's a busy stretch of road once you get into the township here. Traffic flow, anything like that, what have you heard?
Well, I think that the most likely thing that folks are going to be concerned about is that businesses along the corridor and along the route are going to want to know that people will have access to their business. And of course, people will have access to their business. Implementing bus rapid transit is going to, in fact, dramatically increase the number of people that have access to the businesses along the corridor. And so that's something that it's our job to get out there and explain to folks who own businesses along the route, this isn't going to impede your business, it's going to improve it, and here's how, and we have to show them that. We don't quite have the plans in place for them to look at a piece of paper and say, here's your driveway, here's the access, etc. But that's something that we need to continue to work on. Our Economic Development Corporation has been trying to get buy-in from the business community and get folks to show up at the table early on to be part of the station selection process and be part of the whole route planning process, because we want people to see all the opportunities that are available. I think in Meridian Township the economic development opportunities are vast because we have lots of land available for redevelopment within the corridor, and we have ordinances in place that will be able to take advantage of redevelopment opportunities. So we have our mixed use ordinance already in place. We have a commercial planned unit development ordinance already in place. These are things that allow us to consider the site-specific restrictions of the characteristically small size lots that are along the older parts of the Grand River Corridor. So it's a really exciting time in Meridian Township. And one of the other assets that we haven't talked about is that the aging homes that we have along the corridor, this will be a way for those neighborhoods with aging homes to see reinvestment in the neighborhoods because it'll be so conveniently located to the bus rapid transit. We've already got destinations, MSU, Sparrow Hospital, the Capitol, state government is a huge employer in the region. We've got the destinations in place. We've got the people living along the corridor, and we just want to put in place a way from them to get from point A to point B a lot faster and a lot easier than they can today, and that's what bus rapid transit will do.
And Sandy, how much faster would this actually be compared to how long it takes now to take that bus ride?
Well, we have talked about that it would be, and part of that is going to depend on what kind of things we work out on what the plan turns out to be on how we set up the lanes.
Right.
And that we don't know yet. So it will depend on how that gets worked out. Because whether we do have to mix it with traffic or whether we can have dedicated lanes all the way through, so that will make a difference on what that is. But we are estimating 10 to 15 minutes from end to end, but again, it will depend on what that process now, but plan that turns into a plan will be. And so we don't want anybody to get into what those minutes are at this point, because it will depend on what the plan turns out to be. And but again, when we talk about the minutes of it, it is not only just the minutes of it, but it's what will it do for our region in the way of economic development? What will it do to reduce cars off the streets? What will it do for many of the other advantages for the region?
Now, one of the next big things, and we're running out of time already, but I want to talk about funding. And we mentioned it's about $195 million. That is a lot of money. We've got a lot of communities involved. So where does that money come from?
Well, the money would come from the federal and state government, mainly the federal government. It would come from different sources, and those sources we are not sure exactly where it would come from at this point. It doesn't all need to come from the Federal Transit Administration. It could come from highway money. It could come from several different places.
Is there grant money too that could play
Yes,
a role?
and that would all be
Okay.
we would apply for grant money. And wherever it could come from, we would apply for. We are applying for money right now from what is called Tiger grants that we are applying for, that we go in and compete with other places throughout the country. If we could get some Tiger grants, that would be a big portion of what we would need. And we're going to keep applying to see whether we can get those. If we can get them, then that would be a good portion of what we would need. If we don't, then we will apply as other grants come forth.
How much could you actually get from those grants, the Tiger grants?
They haven't been awarded at all.
Oh, okay.
They just became available. The deadline is, I think, the 18th
But how
of
much
April.
are you guys hopeful that you could possibly get from
Well,
those?
one of them is $150 million that has a
Okay.
a ceiling of $150 million, so we are trying for $150 million.
A significant chunk of the
Significant chunk.
Now, once you pay for it, once you build it, who pays to maintain it then? Is that something that's on the taxpayers of the communities or CATA or?
Well, if then we eliminate Route 1, which is in the plan, we would then not run any of our Route 1 buses because, of course, then those are all over into the BRT.
Right.
So then the expenses that we now have in Route 1, Route 1 now carries 1.8 million of our rides out of the 18.9 million that we carry now. And so we would not run any Route 1, so the expenses that we pay there would go over into BRT funding.
I see.
And so then it would become an operating expense down the road, the same as what Route 1 is. And so then down the road, it would become an operating expense.
Would the fares to ride this be similar to any other CATA
Yes.
bus that you would take? Okay, so there'd be no real difference there then? Okay.
Yep.
Final, because we're running out of time, we got about a minute left. I want to go back and highlight
Yes.
these charrettes again for when Meridian Township, Lansing will be brought into the discussion.
And if they go to CATA-BRT.org, they can find all of the times on that. Or if they call 394-1000, they can find out any times that they want to ask, and they'll talk to a real live person and they can find that out.
Really?
Real live person.
There you go. All
Yes.
right. Well, and I think we're going to have to meet again almost after we do all these charrettes because there is so much that has to be discussed still. It has to be laid out. And it sounds like, Mayor Triplett, I mean, a lot was accomplished in these East Lansing charrettes, at least in terms of getting people on a similar few pages, maybe not the same page, but a similar few.
Absolutely. It's all a process. We've taken that next step in the process. These stakeholder meetings will be another step, and I think that there's a long regional conversation ahead of us that we need to go through, and I think all of us would love to come back and talk about that next step and, of course, encourage people from all of those stakeholder areas to come and offer their insights and figure out, will this work for our region and how can we help make the plan better? We can't do that without their participation, so I think if we're going to leave anyone with any message, there's a lot of talk ahead, and to have that conversation, we need your participation.
And Julie, I can imagine you'll be at a few of these coming up here that people
Absolutely.
can come and voice their concerns with you, talk about this plan, and you'll have CATA representatives will be there as well, right?
Yes.
Absolutely, and we will be having CATA come and give us a brief presentation on the BRT at our next board meeting on April 15th. And then the 16th is the date of the Meridian stakeholders meetings.
Excellent. So if people want to come out, maybe get a preview, they can come to the meeting, then go to the charrette the next day. All right, well, there was so much more that we needed to hit on. I feel like we just scratched the surface on this, but again, cata-brt.org is where you can go. You can get more information on this, more information on the meetings. I want to thank again Sandy, Julie, Mayor Triplett so much for all of this. And again, check out those meetings. We thank you so much for watching this edition of InnerView. See you back here again next time.